Hi everyone. I usually try to reserve talk of channel support for the end of the video, but I wanted to be a bit more upfront with this message. Over the past few months, my pledges through Patreon have been drying up. At the same time, I've faced both demonetization from YouTube and YouTube algorithms that blatantly favor users who can provide new content daily. This has made it very hard to both raise ad revenue and expand my audience. While I have no immediate expectation of turning this channel into a full-time job, I do seem to have an audience who likes my content, and it generally takes me anywhere from 30 to 50 hours of work to produce each of these videos, to say nothing of the money I spend on the media itself. So I do greatly appreciate any support viewers are able to give me. I wanted to let you all know that I've made the decision to lower my donor level on Patreon from $5 to $2. That means going forward, anyone who pledges $2 per video can gain early access to my content and will receive an explicit thank you at the end of each review. If this appeals to you, the link is below. If you can't afford to help out, just keep liking, sharing, and subscribing. That said, on with the show.
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? The big bad wolf, the big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? La 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 la. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? The big bad wolf, the big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big
So Weird Season 2 Episode 8 Werewolf is probably my favorite episode of the show. A brilliant piece of horror storytelling for kids that still reasonably holds up today. It's a primal tale of survival, pitting man against beast, using the limited special effects budget to maximum effect, with a tense pace and terrifying POV shots, so you barely even realize that you hardly even see the threat. It is the Jaws of So Weird. A fantastic standalone episode whose plot structure I can dissect to learn something about how to tell an effective horror story. It was written by Josh Stolberg, who has worked on other high-quality children's shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, as well as a number of so-so horror movies like Piranha 3D and Jigsaw. He also worked on schlocky junk like Good Luck Chuck and the Hungover games, so his coolness factor only goes so far. The director, Philip Spink, mostly just works on Canadian children's media, none of which Americans are likely to know of. It looks like Werewolf was his only work in horror fiction, but a lack of a passion for the genre does not equate to a lack of quality in storytelling. I credit both men for making the episode this polished. All So Weird episodes have a spooky cold open that introduces the subject of the episode. So Weird aired before many viewers had a way to learn episode titles, so this provided the first insight into the weirdness of the week. When I say the episode is called Werewolf, you right away know that it's about a werewolf. But viewers in 1999 needed a little 80-second intro to know what to expect, and the way this was composed helped set the stage. All of the cold opens have ominous tones, but some are lighter than others, with goofy imagery and Fee's self-deprecating narration. Werewolf jumps straight into edge-of-your-seat horror, with terrifying wolf howls and horrific images of battle-ready wolves, ramping up the tension, and then dropping down as she muses on how you can't kill a monster if there's someone that you love in their human persona, leaving us with this disturbing conflict and residual tension as we transition to the main plot. Horror fiction works well as a series of escalating waves of tension that rise to a climax and then conclusion. We start with a baseline state to contrast with the waves of tension. Terrible anticipation triggers the wave, rising with increasing terror to a horrific payoff, and then it drops back down to terror and finally slopes down to a state of relative calm that is tenser than the baseline. Fee talks about wolves, giving the disclaimer that wolves in the real world shouldn't be demonized, and this is the baseline. Then tension rises as her voice gets more intense, and panting wolf sounds play, leading to a wolf howl in the foreground. This is the use of terror to build anticipation. It climaxes with an image of a wolf with bared fangs, which is an element of primal horror. Everyone reacts with instinctual fear at that kind of image, especially kids. The infrared POV shot continues that tension with a sequence of terror. Rapid panting and intense narration in the audio combines with the visual movement to keep us in the state of apprehension, building to what could be another peak of horror, only to suddenly drop off with a shot of a nurturing wolf, and Fee musing about how the monster might be a loved one. The commercial break gives us time to cool down and return to what is essentially a baseline state, but tenser than the one before. It's only relative calm. There is no satisfying conclusion to the tension. We are compelled to watch the episode to find one. The plot begins with them driving the bus and having a nice friendly conversation, when suddenly they see something in the road and swerve to avoid it. It's almost certainly the werewolf, but we don't see it. The camera holds on the reactions of the people who do see it. I think they just didn't have the budget to make a werewolf puppet, and considering the low quality of their dragon puppet in Season 1, Episode 8, Strangeling, it's probably a good thing that we didn't get something ridiculous that would blow the tension. But they very effectively execute the use of a werewolf that they can't show. Holding on to people who do see it doesn't just feel like cutting corners because they have nothing else to show. It's an effective use of terror, triggering anticipation that builds with the swerving bus and the people's reaction of observing the werewolf's kill, and peaking with the horror of the most we'll see of the werewolf. Two glowing red eyes shining out of a pit of darkness. Holy crap! This was effective to horrify me as a kid. It's minimalistic, but uses shadow to its advantage to terrify with the thought of what could be lurking there. Certainly kids' imaginations project visions more horrifying than what the budget could allow for. The dragon is testament to that, and I could imagine So Weird doing something like the hyena puppet in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think So Weird reducing the werewolf to red eye shine was a good move. Additionally, the Wolfman was going to do something similar before the studio insisted on the now iconic makeup, which is pictured in the episode. We continue in terror as we watch with apprehension of the werewolf doing something, including the infrared POV shot. The werewolf seems especially into Fee, which may be attributable to her being a lightning rod for the paranormal, and it's a great source of tension. Even though she's the hero of the story and we view her with respect, she is fundamentally vulnerable when it comes to physical conflict. She can puzzle her way out of a pocket dimension and trick a spunky with exact wording, but when facing a vicious predator, she is in over her head. As the stand-in for the audience and a power fantasy as a very competent kid, it is truly terrifying to see her placed in a situation of such danger. And then the werewolf heads off, and we are free to breathe once more. Carrie finds a clue, but isn't sure what to make of it. They head deeper into this land of adventure, and we return to relative calm, one now tenser than before this latest wave of tension. I do think it's worth note that our fear for Fee is based in respect for a hero who is currently vulnerable, not because she is female or a child. There is a commonly held belief among horror filmmakers that the way to make the audience care about the vulnerable protagonist is by making them a woman and triggering some nurturing instinct from their trouble. For all Fee is a young woman in danger, she is not a gendered cliché. She is a feminist hero figure who happens to be in trouble, like a young Jessica Jones. It makes the plot more progressive and just structurally stronger for avoiding these cheap clichés. They arrive at a bed and breakfast. There is a very nice tone evocative of weary travelers finally getting a chance to rest in a comfortable setting. But we're hit with another terrifying incident. Scratch marks on the door. We, the viewers, see it and become apprehensive, but the characters are ignorant. Fee, however, hears a terrifying wolf howl, and we can presume she doesn't sleep very well. In the morning, she's greeted by the innkeeper's young daughter, Laura. She is an element of horror as a strange girl suddenly just appearing at the foot of Fee's bed, an early peak to the third wave of tension, moving to terror as we hold on Fee's frightened expression. It's shot like we're to interpret Laura as like a ghost, like the twins in The Shining, but she turns out to just be a little awkward. We release our held breaths. Fee enjoys hanging out with her, similar to her cousins in Strangeling, which makes me wonder if the whole episode isn't an attempt to do the basic concept of Strangeling better. With the inciting incident of Season 1, Episode 7, Angel. Laura seems to just be a playful girl, and we return to a state of relative calm, but much tenser than the baseline that we started out with. This section makes up the main body of Werewolf, consisting of backstory and construction of the setting. Its tension is maintained by mise-en-scène, the look and feel, as well as moments of thematic apprehension. There is an interesting use of color. The predominance of white is used to contrast from the nighttime scenes and signals safety. You don't see a wolf anywhere, do ya? But there's a starkness to the white. It's a little too bright. Despite appearances, all is not well, and there is continued tension even if viewers are not aware of why. Also, Laura wears a striking red blouse that really pops in contrast to the white. It is reminiscent of blood, that thing Carrie found, and eye shine. It is effectively unsettling. Laura's father, Carl, comes in with wolf traps and discusses the wolf problem. It's got everybody worried, but they try not to let it get to them. Fee converses with them, but there's a surreality to the scene in the whiteness and the slow pan across the table, perhaps communicating Fee's lack of sleep. It's like we didn't get to fully refresh ourselves either. Laura's mother, Judy, talks to Molly about Carl's life being so much better for having Laura in it. I'd say it's a progressive nuance to have the father especially enjoy being a father, especially to a girl, and subversion of gender roles. Judy further describes Laura coming into their lives as miraculous, because they found her as a baby, abandoned in the woods. The government couldn't track down her biological parents, so she got to stay with them. You can nitpick that, but it paints a nice picture of a happy family coming together after adversity, while simultaneously raising the question of what secrets that Laura's lineage might divulge. Laura, meanwhile, excitedly chatters to Fee about wanting to look grown up. Laura is starting puberty and imagines the attractive woman she will become. She can't wait, so she's experimenting with wigs, makeup, and press-on nails. She prefers red to pink, but lost one of her red ones. That is set up for the reveal of Carrie's clue, but it is also very thematic. Puberty is the closest thing anyone will experience to an actual shape-shifting event, so shape-shifting is often connected with pubescent development, either as a metaphor or as the in-universe cause of the change. Finding some animal tracks, Fee calls Jack over to identify them. He doesn't recognize them, but can confirm that they are neither wolf tracks nor bear tracks. The tracks are a great way to maintain tension and build up the presence of the werewolf, even if we don't see more than eye shine. In a real-world circumstance where an animal raids an area, you probably wouldn't see more than things like tracks and scat anyway, so it adds verisimilitude. That night, Carrie shares the clue he found. He thinks it's a snake scale, but Fee recognizes it as a press-on nail, just like the one Laura lost. This is an interesting case where girls have an advantage at figuring out the mystery. Carrie does not recognize the item he finds, while Fee figures it out right away. It's not just that she's smart. Boys and girls have different sets of general knowledge from which to draw. And I bet the girls in the audience also have an advantage over the boys at guessing what's going on. It just goes to show that you don't need to drape things in girly coding for girls to have better comprehension of the subject. And you don't need to alienate boys at the same time. The story has a strong feminine component, but is effectively gender neutral. Wait, does this mean that the werewolf was wearing a blonde wig and press-on nails? Yeah, it's definitely a good thing that we don't see it. Laura comes into Fee's room, afraid and wanting to sleep with her. With what we now suspect about the werewolf's identity, Laura's attraction to Fee is more ambiguous. Is it just that she's lonely and wants female company in her age group? Is the werewolf's attraction to her just because she's a lightning rod?
I'm scared of the wolf.
I love that bit. The actress, Chantal Conlon, delivers it perfectly. Somber, apprehensive, and wise about the wolf's identity. It is honestly chilling. By the time Molly comes in to kiss Fee goodnight, Laura is gone and the werewolf is out again. The next day, Fee observes Laura napping, hears the backstory, and figures out what's going on. She tries to convince Jack and Carrie that Laura is a werewolf, to the usual effect of Jack disbelieving and Carrie humoring her. That night, Fee checks on Laura, sees that she's out of bed, and gets Jack and Carrie to help Fee look for Laura and/or a werewolf. We're done with the main body of the plot, and on to the highlight of the episode, Act 3 of Terror. It starts out with a spooky setting, and doesn't let up on the terrible implications of them facing a vicious predator. It just starts out with the three of them bantering, and then, holy crap, it's right there! This terrifying incident starts off another wave of tension as they locate what I believe is Eeyore's house with Laura's clothes in it. I knew that donkey wasn't to be trusted. Jack insists they go back to wake up the adults and start a larger search when they hear growls and take off running in a sequence of terror. Oh my god, the wolf's right there! They run to the house, only to find that Carrie forgot the key. They decide to go to the bus instead, and Jack fumbles with the keys, and there is an edge-of-your-seat panic as the werewolf charges them. They barely get inside in time. There's a short release of tension, but it doesn't last long because the werewolf is still there, trying to get in. The scenario is very primal. Fragile humans facing a powerful predator and dependent on their shelter. The fact that the shelter is so small emphasizes their vulnerability, and I'm pretty sure they used a long focal length to give the impression of constrained proportions. Jack and Carrie banter about ways to kill werewolves, but Fee insists that it's Laura and they can't use violence, which further restricts their options. Carrie comes up with a plan. He'll keep the werewolf at the entrance, while Fee and Jack slip out the back window, and then he'll lure it into the bus, slip out the window himself, and they'll close both openings to trap it inside. It's a good plan when the bus with its moving parts is the only tool they have, but it's truly terrifying by playing with their vulnerability. The home is a place of protection, so both the acts of leaving it when there's a werewolf out there and letting the werewolf inside go against our deepest instincts. The werewolf entering is so horrifying that I would just turn off the episode when I saw it as a kid. In my head, this is where the episode ends. It took years before I was brave enough to watch the conclusion. Fortunately, this is the climax of horror, and while there is terror to follow as Carrie runs away, the last wave of tension slopes off as Carrie gets out, and the boys run to get help as the sun rises. Laura calls to Fee for help, and she comes in and consoles her. Laura begs Fee not to tell her parents, but Fee consults with Molly in vague terms, and determines that it's important to tell them. We don't actually see this, but we see Judy comforting Carl afterwards, and they gather the townspeople for a discussion on how best to give Laura a good life. Lycanthropy here is presented as like a disease, perhaps like a neurodevelopmental problem, in which case it's praiseworthy that Laura is involved in the discussion. The neighbors could choose to demonize her, but they instead embrace her as a lovable person that they can raise as a community.
I think Laura's family just got a little bit bigger.
It takes a village to raise a werewolf. It's a strangely benign solution to a werewolf problem, likely as a result of the restraints of children's programming, but the somber tone makes it powerful. And honestly, as American culture gets increasingly puritanical and insisting on black and white morality, where the bad guys can never be sympathetic, its hard-won wholesomeness is a welcome abnormality. Fee stays long enough to make sure that things work out. She gives Laura her email address and then leaves. It's a bit of a shame that Disney Channel hadn't worked out the kinks of their Zoog Disney transmedia integration. This would be a great opportunity for viewers to email Fee and interact with an actor. Alas, this was before the beast. And so concludes Werewolf. It is a very well-polished horror episode, building on concepts introduced in Strangeling and Angel to make the best combination of features. The writing is solid, the direction does a lot with the script, and the actors have spot-on deliveries. It's exciting, heartfelt, and leaves you feeling like you just went on an adventure with Fee. And it's great from a feminist perspective as well. The plot handles a horrific female werewolf with great gender neutrality without erasing the female component. It's neither framed like a marginal version of a male werewolf story, like The Girlfriend in Wolf, nor is the plot specifically telling a feminist story like in Ginger Snaps. It's a traditional werewolf monster story with a female werewolf. There are feminine attributes like the press-on nail, but it's not an overpowering narrative. Stories specifically making a feminist point are great, but we would ultimately want a respectful integration of women's stories into mainstream narratives, and that's what Werewolf accomplishes. Overall, a great episode.
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? The big bad wolf, the big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? La 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 la.